Here's a question that separates the entrepreneurs from the copycats. Would you rather create something entirely new that's never existed before? Or would you rather compete in a crowded market doing what everyone else is already doing? Most people choose competition. They open another coffee shop, launch another social media app, start another consulting business. They go from 1 to N, copying what works and making it slightly better. Peter Thiel, the billionaire founder of PayPal and first outside investor in Facebook, argues this is the path to mediocrity. True innovation, real wealth creation, world-changing impact comes from going from 0 to 1, from creating something that doesn't exist, from building a monopoly in a new market instead of competing in an old one. This is contrarian thinking at its finest, because everything you've been taught about business is wrong. You've been told competition is good. Competition drives innovation. Competition benefits consumers. Compete harder, faster, better. Thiel says competition is for losers. Literally, if you're competing, you're fighting over scraps. You're in a race to the bottom on price. You're stuck in a bloody battlefield where everyone loses. The real winners? They create monopolies. They own entire markets. They operate in a space where they have no competition because they invented something no one else has. Google dominates search. Facebook dominates social networking. Amazon dominates e-commerce. These aren't accidents, they're monopolies. And monopolies, despite what you learned in economics class, are where all the value is created. In his book, 0 to 1, Notes on Startups, or How to Build the Future, Peter Thiel lays out a radically different framework for thinking about innovation, technology, startups, and creating the future. Over the next 30 minutes, we're diving deep into Thiel's contrarian principles. We're covering why competition destroys profit, why monopolies are actually good, the 7 questions every business must answer, the power law of venture capital, why technology companies must plan for decades, not quarters, and how to think differently enough to build something that actually matters. This isn't startup advice for people who want to build another app. This is a blueprint for people who want to change the world. If you're ready to think differently, let's begin.
Part 1. The fundamental question: competition versus monopoly. The core thesis of 0 to 1 starts with a question that reveals everything. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? This is Thiel's favorite interview question, and it's harder than it sounds, because a real answer can't just be contrarian. It has to be true. Most people give answers like, our education system needs reform, or we should exercise more. Those aren't contrarian. Everyone agrees. A real contrarian truth? Monopolies are good, and competition is bad. That's what Thiel believes, and it's the foundation of everything else in the book. Why competition is for losers. Let's start by destroying the myth of competition. In a perfectly competitive market, like the one you learn about in economics textbooks, no company makes any profit. Why? Because competition drives prices down to the cost of production. Think about the restaurant business. Thousands of restaurants competing in any given city. Slim margins, constant pressure. Most fail within a few years. The survivors barely get by. Now think about Google. They control over 90% of search. Massive profit margins. They set prices. They dictate terms. They're printing money. Which would you rather build? Thiel says competition is an ideology. We worship it. We teach it. We assume it's good. But for the people actually competing, it's misery. Competition means you're fighting over a finite pie. Everyone's doing the same thing. The only way to win is to be marginally better or marginally cheaper. That's a race to the bottom. And here's the psychological trap. When you're in a competitive market, you become obsessed with your competitors. You watch what they do. You copy their moves. You differentiate on trivial things. All that energy goes into competing instead of creating. You're so focused on beating the rival restaurant that you never step back and ask if there's a completely different type of food experience you could create. Competition makes you conventional. It forces you to copy. It traps you in incremental thinking. Now, let's talk about monopolies. And we need to be clear. Thiel isn't talking about illegal monopolies that abuse power. He's talking about companies that are so good at what they do, so innovative, so far ahead that no one can compete. Monopolies have several advantages. One, they can think long-term. When you're not worried about survival or competition, you can invest in research, innovation, employee welfare, long-term projects. You can afford to take risks. Two, they capture value. In a competitive market, all the value goes to consumers through low prices. In a monopoly, the company captures significant value, which it can then reinvest in creating more value. Three, they drive innovation. Monopolies have the resources and incentive to push technology forward. Google didn't have to create self-driving cars or invest in artificial intelligence. But because they're a monopoly with resources, they can. The irony, monopolies pretend to be competitive to avoid regulatory scrutiny. Oh, we're just one of many options. We're competing against everyone. Meanwhile, competitive companies pretend to be monopolies. We're totally unique. We have a proprietary system. We're different. Both are lying. And understanding which is which reveals everything.
The lies companies tell. Here's how to see through the lies. If a company describes their market super broadly, they're a monopoly pretending to compete. Google says they're in the advertising market, competing with newspapers, TV, and billboards. Makes them sound small, but they dominate online search advertising. If a company describes their market super narrowly, they're competitive players pretending to have a monopoly. A new restaurant says, "We're the only organic, vegan, gluten-free pizza place in this specific neighborhood." Sounds like a monopoly, but they're competing with every other restaurant for customers. The key question, are you one of many or one of a kind? Creative monopoly versus zero-sum competition. Thiel makes a crucial distinction. Not all monopolies are created equal. A creative monopoly is built by creating something new. Google created a dramatically better search engine. Facebook created a new way to connect. PayPal created simpler online payments.
These monopolies made the world better. They gave us something we didn't have before, going from 0 to 1. Compare that to rent-seeking monopolies that just extract value. Regulatory capture, crony capitalism, artificial barriers to entry. Those are bad. Those don't create value. Those are zero-sum. Thiel's argument is specifically about creative monopolies. Build something so good, so innovative, so valuable that you create a category and dominate it. That's the goal. Not to compete better, but to compete differently. Or better yet, not compete at all because you're playing a different game entirely. The contrarian truth. So, here's the contrarian truth. In business, perfect competition means no profits. Monopoly means lasting profits. If you want to create a valuable company, you need to ask yourself, are we creating something new, or are we copying something that exists? Are we going from 0 to 1, or from 1 to n? Because the world needs more 0 to 1 thinking and fewer copycats.
Part 2. How to build a monopoly. The characteristics. Okay, so monopolies are good and competition is bad. Great. But how do you actually build a monopoly? Thiel identifies 4 characteristics every monopoly business has. If you can build all 4 into your company, you're on the path to monopoly. Characteristic 1. Proprietary technology. Your technology must be at least 10 times better than the next best alternative. Not 10%, not twice as good, 10 times. Why 10 times? Because anything less can be dismissed as marginal improvement. 10 times better is undeniable. It's a quantum leap. It forces people to switch. Google's search algorithm was 10 times better than anything else when it launched. Clean, fast, relevant results. Everything else was cluttered and slow. Amazon's book selection was 10 times larger than any physical bookstore. You could get any book, not just what they had in stock. PayPal's payment system was 10 times easier than mailing checks or using clunky bank systems. 10 times isn't just better, it's a different category entirely. How do you achieve 10 times better? Sometimes through brilliant engineering, sometimes through superior design, sometimes through a fresh approach to an old problem. The key is you can't get there through incremental improvement. You need a breakthrough. Characteristic 2. Network effects. Network effects make your product more valuable as more people use it. Facebook is valuable because your friends are on it. If you were the only person on Facebook, it would be worthless. The telephone is valuable because other people have telephones. A payment network is valuable because merchants and customers both use it. Network effects create natural monopolies. Once you reach critical mass, it's almost impossible for competitors to catch up. Why would anyone join a new social network when everyone they know is already on the existing one? But here's the challenge. Network effects only kick in at scale. Early on, when you're small, they don't help you.
That's why most successful network businesses start with a niche. Facebook started with Harvard students. PayPal started with eBay power sellers. You dominate a small network, then expand from there. You don't launch trying to be for everyone. You start with a core group where the network effects become powerful quickly, then grow from there. Characteristic 3. Economies of scale. As your company grows, your costs per unit decrease, and your business gets stronger. Software companies have extreme economies of scale. The cost to serve your first customer is high, but the cost to serve your millionth customer is basically zero. You've built the software. Now you're just copying it. This is why software businesses can become such powerful monopolies. The marginal cost of each additional customer is nearly nothing, while the value created is substantial. Compare this to a service business where every new customer requires proportional additional labor. Hard to build a monopoly there. Manufacturing can have economies of scale too, but usually not as dramatic as software. The key is, can your business get significantly more efficient as it grows? If so, it creates a barrier to entry. Small competitors can't match your cost structure. Characteristic 4. Branding. Strong branding is the final piece, but Thiel warns branding alone is not enough. It must be built on the foundation of the other 3 characteristics. Apple has phenomenal branding, but it works because they actually build superior products. If their products were mediocre, the brand wouldn't sustain the monopoly. You can't create a monopoly just through marketing and branding. But once you have proprietary technology, network effects, and economies of scale, strong branding amplifies everything. Branding makes your monopoly defensible. It creates loyalty. It becomes part of people's identity. It makes switching psychologically costly, not just economically costly. Think Google. It's not just a search engine. Google it is part of language. The brand has transcended the product. Building your monopoly. The sequence. Here's the crucial insight. You need to build these in sequence, strategically. Start with a small market you can actually dominate. Don't go after a huge market where you'll be a tiny player. Thiel gives an example. If you're starting a social network for Stanford students, you're targeting 20,000 people. If you get even a few thousand, you have meaningful market share. If you're starting a social network for everyone on Earth, you're targeting billions. Getting a few thousand users means you have approximately 0 market share. Small market domination first, then expand. PayPal started with eBay power sellers, then all eBay users, then online merchants generally, then all online payments. Sequential monopolization. Amazon started with books, then expanded to media, then to everything. Each stage was a monopoly that funded the next expansion. You don't start by trying to be everything to everyone. You start by being the only solution for a specific group. Then you expand your monopoly systematically. The last mover advantage. One more contrarian insight. Forget first mover advantage. That's overrated. What matters is last mover advantage. Being the last company in a category, making the final definitive improvement that makes you the monopoly. Google wasn't the first search engine. They were the last one that mattered. Facebook wasn't the first social network. They made it so good that nothing else mattered after.
Don't rush to be first. Focus on being best, being so good that no one comes after you because there's no point. That's how you build a lasting monopoly.
Part 3. The 7 questions every business must answer. Thiel lays out 7 questions that every business must answer. If you can't answer these clearly, your business probably won't succeed. These aren't softball questions. They're designed to expose weak thinking and force you to confront reality. Question 1. The engineering question. Can you create breakthrough technology instead of incremental improvements? Not can you build something good, can you build something that's 10 times better than anything else? If your answer is, we're a bit better, or we have a nice feature, that's not enough. You need a fundamental breakthrough. This is the hardest question, because most businesses are incremental. They're doing what exists, just slightly different. 0 to 1 requires engineering breakthroughs that create genuine leaps forward. If you don't have a 10 times improvement, you don't have a monopoly technology. You have a competitor in a crowded market. Question 2. The timing question. Is now the right time to start this particular business? Timing matters more than people admit. Too early and the market isn't ready. Too late and the opportunity has passed. The internet boom of the late 90s was too early for many ideas. The technology wasn't mature. The user base wasn't large enough. Great ideas launched too soon failed. But some of those same ideas, relaunched in the mid-2000s, became huge successes because the timing was right. You need to ask, why now? What's changed that makes this possible today when it wasn't possible before? If you can't articulate what's changed, your timing might be off. Question 4. The people question. Do you have the right team? Startups are defined by their team. Skills, vision, dynamics, commitment. You need the right combination of technical ability, business sense, and interpersonal dynamics. Thiel has a strong opinion here. Never work with someone you wouldn't want to spend significant personal time with. Business partnerships are too intense. If you don't genuinely like and respect your co-founders and early team, it will fall apart when things get hard. And things always get hard. Also, everyone should be full-time. Part-time doesn't work for startups. You need total commitment. Half in means half committed, which means it won't work. Consultants, advisors, part-timers, fine for specific expertise. But your core team, full-time, all in, completely committed.
Question 5. The distribution question. Do you have a way to not just create your product, but deliver it to customers? This is where most technical founders fail. They build something great and assume it will sell itself. It won't. Distribution, sales, marketing, these are not optional, they're essential. Often they matter more than the product itself. Thiel says if you've invented something new, but haven't invented an effective way to sell it, you have a bad business, even if the product is great. You need to answer, how will customers learn about this? How will they buy it? What's the distribution strategy? Word of mouth alone almost never works. You need a systematic, scalable distribution approach. And here's the twist. The best distribution is often hidden. Virality built into the product. Network effects that drive growth. Sales that look effortless because you've engineered the system so well. But it's not effortless. It's designed deliberately. Question 6. The durability question.
Will your market position be defensible 10 and 20 years into the future? This is about long-term thinking. Don't just think about beating competitors today. Think about whether you'll still be a monopoly in a decade. Tech changes fast. New competitors emerge. What looks like a monopoly today can be obsolete tomorrow if you're not careful. You need to ask, what will the world look like in 10 years? Will we still be the dominant player? What could disrupt us? If you can't articulate how you'll maintain your monopoly long-term, you might just have a temporary advantage, not a lasting monopoly. Great companies think in decades, not quarters. They invest in long-term defensibility even when it hurts short-term profits.
Question 7. The secret question. Have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? This is the 0 to 1 question. What do you know that others don't? What have you figured out about the world that gives you an unfair advantage? Every great business is built on a secret, something true that's hidden in plain sight. Something obvious in retrospect, but non-obvious now. Google's secret was that better search algorithms would dominate. Obvious now. Not obvious in the late 90s when everyone was building portals. Facebook's secret was that people wanted real identity online, not anonymity. Obvious now. Contrarian when they started. What's your secret? What have you figured out about the future that others haven't? If you don't have a secret, you're probably just doing what everyone else is doing. That's going from 1 to n, not 0 to 1. The 7 questions framework. Here's the brutal truth. Most businesses fail at least 3 of these 7 questions. Some fail all 7. If you can answer all 7 convincingly, you probably have something special. If you can't, you need to keep working on your idea until you can. These questions are your filter, your reality check, your tool for cutting through the startup delusions and hype. Answer them honestly, not with what you wish were true, but with what actually is true. That honesty might save you years of wasted effort.
Part 4. The Future and Definite Optimism. Now let's talk about something bigger. The philosophy behind building the future. Thiel argues that we live in an age of indefinite optimism. People believe the future will be better, but they don't have specific plans to make it better. This is a problem, because 0 to 1 innovation requires definite optimism, a clear vision of a specific better future that you're going to build. The 4 attitudes toward the future. Thiel maps out 4 attitudes toward the future based on 2 axes, optimistic versus pessimistic, and definite versus indefinite. Definite optimism. The future will be better, and we have a plan to make it better. This was America in the 50s and 60s. We're going to the moon. We're building interstate highways. We're creating the future. Specific, bold plans. Indefinite optimism. The future will be better, but we don't know how, so we'll just iterate and see what happens. This is America today. People are optimistic, but they don't make concrete long-term plans. They stay flexible and adaptable. Definite pessimism. The future will be worse, but we can see it coming, so we'll prepare. This is China's attitude for decades. Expect hard times, save aggressively, prepare, work harder than everyone else. Indefinite pessimism. The future will be worse and there's nothing we can do about it. This is Europe's current attitude. Decline is inevitable. Manage the decline, lower expectations. Thiel's thesis: we need to return to definite optimism, because that's when real innovation happens, when people have bold, specific visions and execute them. The problem with indefinite optimism. Here's why indefinite optimism is dangerous for innovation. When you don't have a specific vision, you can't make long-term plans. You optimize for optionality. Keep your options open. Stay flexible. Diversify. That sounds smart, but it prevents bold bets. It prevents deep commitment to a specific vision. Compare this to the Apollo program. That was definite optimism. We're going to the moon by the end of the decade. Everything organized around that specific goal. No pivoting, no iteration. A plan. Execution. Achievement. Today's tech companies often don't have that clarity. They're doing growth hacking, pivoting based on metrics, always ready to change direction. Sometimes that works, but the companies that really change the world, they have a definite vision they're building toward.
Long-term planning in a short-term world. Thiel is obsessed with long-term thinking. He asks founders, where do you want to be in 10 years, 20 years? Most can't answer. They're thinking about the next funding round, the next quarter, the next product launch. But monopolies are built over decades. You need a 10-year, 20-year vision. Apple spent years building the iPhone. Amazon spent years losing money to build infrastructure. SpaceX spent years developing reusable rockets. These weren't short-term plays. They were decade-long commitments to specific visions of the future. Here's Thiel's challenge. Can you articulate where you'll be in a decade? If not, you're thinking too short-term. Secrets. The hidden knowledge that creates monopolies. Let's talk about secrets. This is one of Thiel's most interesting concepts. He divides knowledge into 3 categories. Mysteries, things nobody knows and we can't know. Deep questions about the universe. Secrets, things that are true but hidden, not obvious, but discoverable through effort and insight. Conventions are things everyone knows and accepts. Most people operate in the world of conventions. They do what everyone else does because that's what's accepted. A few people explore mysteries, abstract, philosophical questions, interesting but not immediately useful. The magic is in secrets, things that are true but not widely known yet. Every great business is built on a secret, something about the world that's true but others don't see yet. The secret might be about nature, a scientific insight that enables new technology. The secret might be about people, an insight into human psychology or behavior that creates a new product category. The secret might be about the market, an inefficiency or opportunity that others have overlooked.
Finding secrets requires contrarian thinking. It requires asking questions others don't ask. It requires believing that there are important truths still hidden, waiting to be discovered. Why people don't look for secrets. Thiel argues that modern society has stopped believing in secrets. We've become cynical. If something important were true, we'd already know it. Everything important has been discovered. This is wrong, and it's preventing innovation. There are still secrets everywhere, in every field, every industry, every market. Important truths that haven't been discovered or haven't been acted upon. The question is, are you looking? Are you willing to think differently enough to find them? Or are you just accepting conventions and doing what everyone else does? Building the future you want. Here's the ultimate challenge Thiel leaves us with. The future is not inevitable. It's not predetermined. It's not something that happens to you. The future is something you build, or you don't. And if you don't, someone else will. You can be a passive observer, watching the future unfold. Or you can be an active creator, building the future you want to see. Going from 0 to 1 is about creation. It's about bringing something into existence that didn't exist before. It's about having a vision of how the world should be and then building it. This requires definite optimism, a specific vision, long-term planning, the courage to pursue secrets, the willingness to build a monopoly that others think is impossible. It's not easy, but it's possible, and it's necessary. Because the world needs more people building the future and fewer people copying the past.
So here we are, the complete framework from 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. But let's cut through the inspiration and get real. Most people who watch this video will do absolutely nothing with it. They'll think, that's interesting, and then go back to their lives, back to copying, back to competing, back to incremental thinking. And in 10 years, they'll be in the same place, wondering why nothing changed. Or, you can be the exception. You can be someone who actually thinks differently, who actually builds something new, who actually goes from 0 to 1. But only if you act. The challenge. Answer the 7 questions. Here's your immediate challenge. Don't just consume this content, apply it. Take out a piece of paper. Write down the 7 questions. 1. Can you create breakthrough technology? 2. Is now the right time? 3. Are you starting with a big share of a small market? 4. Do you have the right team? 5. Do you have a way to distribute? 6. Will your market position be defensible in 10 to 20 years? 7. Have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? Now answer them, not for an imaginary business, for the business you're building right now or want to build. Answer honestly. Not what you hope is true, but what actually is true. If you can answer all 7 convincingly, you might have something special. Keep building. If you can't, you've just saved yourself years of wasted effort. Go back. Find a different idea, one that passes the test. This takes 1 hour. Do it this week. The mindset shift from competition to creation.
The biggest shift Thiel offers is mental. Stop thinking about competition. Start thinking about creation. Most entrepreneurs ask, how do I compete better? Wrong question. The right question is, what can I create that doesn't exist? This shift is uncomfortable because competing is familiar. You can look at competitors, study them, copy what works, differentiate slightly. Creating is uncertain. You're building something new. You don't have a template. You have to figure it out yourself. But that's where all the value is. That's where monopolies come from. That's where you go from 0 to 1. Your contrarian truth. Remember Thiel's interview question? What important truth do very few people agree with you on? I want you to answer it right now in the comments. What do you believe that others don't? What have you figured out about the world, about your industry, about the future, that others are missing? Articulating your contrarian truth forces you to clarify your thinking. It reveals whether you're actually thinking differently or just pretending to. And when you write it publicly, you create accountability. You've declared your vision. Now you have to build it. Comment now. Tell me your contrarian truth. The path to monopoly. Building a monopoly isn't easy. It takes years, often decades. It requires vision, persistence, strategic thinking, and yes, some luck. But it's possible, and it's worth it. Because the alternative is competing forever, fighting for scraps, working harder for smaller margins, never breaking free from the pack. Thiel gives you the roadmap. Start with a small market you can dominate. Build proprietary technology that's 10 times better. Leverage network effects. Achieve economies of scale. Create strong branding. Answer the 7 questions. Think long-term. Find your secret. Build with definite optimism. Follow that path, and you have a shot at building something that matters.